Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Sales TV, Sales Transformation. This is episode 6, the final episode of our mini-series. So we started several months ago now, it feels like, Grant.
Yeah,
with Sales Transformation episode 1, what is it and what isn't sales transformation? But today we're talking about how do we know once we've transformed? And so I'm your co-host, the bearded sales guy, otherwise known as Alex Abbott, and I'm joined by my fellow co-host.
There you go. Hey, Alex, I'm Dr. Grant Van Elbrick. Nice to see you all. I am with Scared So What, the world's first personal change management model and system. And yes, sales transformation. So we missed you last week, Alex. You were traveling a bit, but it was great to see you here today. I'm glad you're with us. And you're right. Sales transformation. We've had some great guests. We've had some great topics, great conversations. We had John at Royal Mail. We've had, who else did we have? We had a Professor. We had Axel as well, too, who was here. So we had some Andy from the ISP and from Cranfield. Professor Javier from Cranfield as well, too. So lots of great discussions.
Richard Brooks, yeah.
Richard Brooks was with us. Yep, that's absolutely true. And so today I'm excited. We've got a really special guest. So we thought, this is supposed to be our final episode, Sales Transformation in the series. I'm not so sure because I think we're never really done. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited to bring to the stage a gentleman who is absolutely phenomenal at what he does. A career sales professional, an author, and an incredible friend that we love to have and share with us today. Please welcome to the stage Sakis Tassoudis. Sakis, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grant and Alex. Pleasure to be in your show. And I've seen the series and I admire actually the people that you had there and the topics that you're positioning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think we should just dive right into it. We've got only a certain amount of time today. And I know it's lunch hour here in Europe, so we want to make sure that we're getting to the questions. Are we done? So when we think of sales transformation and all of the discussions that we have, all of the leadership input, coaching, change management, et cetera, sales processes, are you ever finished? And we want to come to you, Sakis. And so first, maybe if you can tell us a little bit about you, who you are and your experience, and then we can start off with what you think.
Sure. Thank you very much, Grant. So in a nutshell, actually, I started my career as a banker, transformed actually, because that was one of the first transformations that I have done in my life, uncautiously at that time, to a consulting business. I have joined 2 startups. I have then joined SAP for 8 years of my life, where I've went through different positions from product management to sales, and that was actually the role that I was keeping for a very long time. I have accompanied also the first spin-off of SAP to service to Sapphire, and I'm currently in the middle of a transformation as I'm looking forward to go through a transformation, which I can talk a bit more later on what it means. But I can tell you so much, it's an exciting process if you embrace it and if you're open to live it.
That's right. Wow. Great history, great experience. I don't know where to begin, Alex. What do you think?
Well, listening to Sakis talk, I was thinking of the word scared, and I know there's a link with what you do, Grant. And we were talking before we went live about this emotion, I guess, of feeling scared and why it's so important to feel scared before you begin the change, the transformation. And there's probably a couple of things in there is what do we mean by feeling scared? But also, I learned something before we went live. There's a difference between transformation and change. And what is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Then there is, and when we talk about being scared, it's okay. It doesn't mean you actually have to feel the negative feelings of fear with change, etc. For me, it's a process. It's a mental process of how do you manage change for yourself. And so we've talked about that quite a lot throughout the series. But I want to hand it over to Sakis today because Sakis, you've got such an excellent career, great history, global business practice as well too. When we talk about sales and sales transformation, and in your mind, are you ever done?
That's, I believe, quite hard to answer. But the obvious point would be probably, no, you're not done. But there are some specific aspects that you can consider that you have went through a transformation, which we can speak later on it. But I believe that in order to, first of all, understand, and Alex said the point about the difference between change and transformation, is to ask the question, what is transformation? We will go through later on what a transformation is, because there is a individual point that makes a difference for each one of us. So you will not find a common definition of transformation that defines everything. You can find and scaffold actually a canvas about transformation with specific principles, but that's it. After that, each one of us has his own transformation and has to see how that reflects to him. Then we need to discuss also the point and understand why transformation is so important. It is important because we live in a time which is characterized from ongoing change, which actually, in order to embrace it, brings us to the stage that we have to transform. And I can speak about that a bit later on. And then we talk about sales transformation. It has to do also with leadership, with management and individual. And the question is, how do we lead transformation? And can we lead transformation if we don't transform ourselves? So those are a couple of points that I believe I can give you some transparency. And I'm happy to get some of your questions that I believe will make the discussion a bit more candid.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Alex, if you don't mind, I love that last part of what you just said. You know, you can't really start with transformation unless you start with yourself. So there's two kind of points with there. So transformation of self and transformation of sales and sales business entities. So in your mind, Sakis, you know, if I look back at sales training, sales education, as we've known it historically, the last big movement was in the 1980s when you had the consultative sales tips, tricks, to overcome objections, to manipulate the conversation, to give your pitches and deliver, and then to close. That's what it was all about back then. And for some reason, sales globally really hasn't advanced from there, but yet people have. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you think transformation is such the big buzzword right now in sales?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Grant. And I believe, as you rightfully said before, some of the professions, and I consider sales being a profession. We know that Dr. Phil Squire and many others are fighting to get this defined as a profession, which I believe is a highly skilled profession that needs to, come to the spot a bit more. But coming back to your question, we see that there is a smaller movement of how this sales profession is evolving and is transforming. And the reason for that, and that is my personal opinion, is it has to do also with where organizations are giving focus. And sales was a traditional job in the past. If you consider SAP as an example, we had times where the customer was calling you and asking you if you have time to go and sell him a product because it was on the hype.
Yeah.
But those times have changed. Then we have also a change into which are the decision makers, which are the people that you will face when you go to a customer, and how do they understand yourself as being, a salesperson? Is it just, providing the tea and coffee and, some information and bringing the experts inside? Or do they expect you to understand what their business is and to be also tactfully audacious, provoking actually that what they are have not thought about themselves or nobody wants them to ask for? Because the people that are decision makers are not only getting smarter and informed, but they also have evolved actually into their praxis so that they want people who will build on trust and will guide them for a longer term innovational cycle, even through a transformation. And I believe this is where the demand comes from, where you says that sales education in organization cannot rely anymore on old models.
Yeah.
When do we talk about new sciences that are relevant in order to understand people, like psychology, like, building trust, like understanding, a deep understanding of technology or the topic that you are selling to someone?
Yeah.
And sales is not anymore sales. I believe it's much more building up a relationship that will lay a foundation of a joint future together, so that you can help the organization or the other organization actually to evolve, eventually to transform.
Wow.
Yeah. I think there's so much that's changed from this world that you described in the 80s, Grant, where whilst there were complex sales, it was still a far more linear world that we lived in compared to today. And the importance of trust and creating trust, not just between you and one other person, but the entire decision-making unit, multiple people. And because I think so many companies have made poor decisions, buying the wrong solutions and paid heavily for it, they're far more cautious in who they trust today.
Yeah. Well, and you're so right. And I think what you've just described, is a complete transformation from the yesteryear of sales to today's environment of sales. And there has to be some science and psychology that comes along with it if we are to professionalize the career path. So I thoroughly agree with that point. And sales has such a bad name still. And it's amazing how one of the biggest contributors of revenue growth for organizations around the world, how do you put sales ethics and how do you actually bring us into the modern era? We talked about earlier off camera about the world of sales is completely shifting digital. There's a whole digital movement, AI movements, all types of scenarios to where the sales playing field is no longer the way it used to be in years past. So transformation then comes more important, and we all have to learn how to facilitate that. So I maybe want to ask you, Sakis, you talked about it a little earlier. Can you tell us in your mind, what is the true definition and the distinction between transformation and change?
So, yeah, I think the distinction is actually very important to make. So, change is actually a process that we can be continuously in. We have to embrace it. We have to deal with our fears. We have to, we can control it to a certain way. And I think with your model, Grant, you have put actually, I believe, a very nice way of what you have to take care about handling change and be comfortable with change, because it's okay. Everybody's scared about change. And change, as we know also, was the biggest inhibitor for companies to evolve. And I would actually put something on top. Change, if it is not managed, is also an inhibitor to open up for transformation.
Yeah.
So you put that before, then you can see the transformation is important. Now, let me come to what transformation means. And transformation means that there is a radical shift from one stage of a person to another stage of a person. And that involves actually that there is a significant review of a culture of a person, a behavior, a mindset of a person. And I'm talking about a person because if the person doesn't transform, then a company cannot transform. Or at least the leader who will lead the transformation has to go through a transformation, or has gone before through a transformation. So it demands also a shift into human awareness that you need to create. And that at the end changes the worldview that a person has before he can transform or while he is transforming. And I think this is the big differentiation between change and transformation. Transformation is a state where you come into after a radical shift of mind, either through a happening or something that you enforce yourself to do, but not somebody else enforces you to do. Change can be enforced also from somebody else, and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. How do you, and maybe this is advice you can give to our audience, but the number of sales leaders that I talk to that are driving change for whatever reason, right? Let's say they've diagnosed the root cause of the problem and they feel strongly that they've got the solution for that. But then they lose faith after a period of time, and then they go back to what they knew.
Yeah.
That can't be engendering a culture of change amongst people, amongst the team, if that is constantly happening. And I suspect that happens more often than not in some organizations.
Yeah, I believe it's a very good point, Alex. And I think that what you described sometimes is that people are in a stage before transformation, but they are never allowed, or they don't take the freedom to step back, get out of the hamster wheel, and look into the position of changing state. So that what you described is actually a person trying to go through transformation, but he can't, and he goes back into a controlled manner of change. Which I'm trying to distinguish, and not saying that change or transformation, the one or the other, is better. Both of the stages need to happen, and they need to happen into a specific way. So let me tell you about some of the key principles, what transformation actually, and how transformation is described. So we discussed about that transformation is not synonymous with change, right? Then it requires assent to change. That means that you have to be by yourself open in order to change and to acknowledge that you want to change and transform. Then it involves always a second order change. And second order change means that you go into your core, into something that is much more deeper inside yourself than just the way of how I'm working or the way of how I'm thinking, right? I'm trying to bring a couple of examples. The way of how I define my purpose, if that changes from today to tomorrow, or I'm in this process, that means that I'm starting to transform, right? It impacts all aspects of life, your relationships with other people or your company. It involves actually your beliefs. It involves questioning your purpose, your beliefs, and everything else that you have in your worldview. Sorry, and it involves also to letting things go. So you are out of control for some things. And I believe those are the key principles that involve also risk, fear, loss that you have, which is, I think, the scared so what model is talking about. And now if you involve that into transformation, then you put also a question mark, because there is no process that you can handle this transformation. There are only some aspects that you can consider and be open to go through.
I love that, and you're so right. And it seems like the role of sales leaders is really transforming in itself. It's not the old days of just, here's your targets, here's your numbers, go hit them and do some actions and do some events and, everything will be fine. It's a continual evolution, just as you've said, Sakis, between change and transforming oneself, one's team members, one's company, one's enterprise, and also extending it out to the customers that we serve as well too. I had a great discussion with a commercial leader the other day, and he said, well, the sales team just needs to hit the numbers. And I actually paused him right there and I said, pretend that this pen is a number, hit it. And he just looked at me, huh? And I said, a number is only a moment in time. And once you see it, it's historical and done. So if you want to talk about the numbers and spend 3 hours in a review session about the numbers, you're wasting your time. Yes, numbers are important, but what are the actions? What are the activities? What are the people processes that we're going to do to actually make that number in the bell curve that happens next week. And that it was amazing, just the eye-opening, you're right. And so we're on a continual transformative journey of bringing the whole organization along the discussion. Well, this is so interesting, Sakis. We're getting close to time, but I know that you are an author as well. And you have written a chapter in a beautiful book. Alex, can you give a shout to our audience so they can see what it is? Yes. So, Sakis, you are an author of a chapter. Can you tell us about your chapter in transformational sales leadership, your perspective?
Yeah, I'm. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's nice to promote this book, which I believe has incredible individuals that have contributed, and also there are authors that have helped us in order to structure this book. So I'm very thankful that I had this opportunity. My chapter is chapter 12. It's talking about the humanification of leadership in the 21st century. And it goes back to points that you mentioned before, Grant, about, how do we deal with this short-termism in sales, in leadership at all? And what do we need to consider and change? Because it's very simple and the easiest route for managers or leaders to say to their team, go and hit the numbers. I would demand much more from leadership to help me to define the way of how I will hit the numbers, and not focus on the numbers, but focus on creating a value that is based on human values, but helps you actually and find a way for you to go and make the numbers for the company, which I'm not underestimating, but at the same time respects you as an individual and helps you and gives you the tools and the mechanisms and also the empathy, if you like so, and the integrity in order to be committed to find a way to get your customers to make the sale, to help you, the organization to grow. And I'm talking also about a term that I probably invented just for the sake of people, to give them an understanding about the importance of mental health. We talked with Alex before we jumped into the session about the importance of the mental health of salespeople, which we see a decreasing, mental health state of people, not only with burnouts, but also people that are, feeling a situation of disorder, or if you like, so in insanity, meaning becoming insane in sales roles or leadership. So I'm talking a bit about that. And finally, I'm closing in this chapter also about a metanoia concept, which is transformation. Metanoia is a radical shift in mind. Metanoia comes from the Greek word noia, which means nous, and is actually the brain of someone's, which means a bit more than brain, and meta is actually the meta state, the next state that you are going to, that you are transitioning to. So all this I have put into a chapter that is probably an inspiration for people. It's a concrete recipe, but it's an inspiration for people to think about some aspects of transformation and why we need, in an artificial intelligence age or digital age, more humanified leaders.
Now the book's called Transformational Sales Leadership. Is it just for the sales leader? Is it for the aspiring sales leader? Is it for everyone?
It is for everyone, I would say. However, I consider sales leadership being an art that deals so directly with a relationship of your customer.
Yeah.
It involves many cultures. I have worked in over 70 countries, selling there with my teams, which I never could do without my teams. But it involves so many cultures, so many worldviews, so many aspects, and it makes it more difficult if you don't have empathy, if you don't show trust, if you don't show integrity, if you don't show compassion, if you don't have all these human values guiding you. It makes it difficult to be successful. And this is why I consider it makes a very good sense for sales leaders that want to go to a sales transformation to look into some of those chapters.
Yeah. And the book is on Amazon, is it?
Yeah.
Where
yeah.
can it be?
Amazon or anywhere books are sold. Yeah, definitely. So transformational sales leadership. And I agree with Sakis as well. And in my perspective, I wrote chapter 3, which is all about leading people through personal change and your sales teams as well too. And, you know, this book is for anybody who is wanting to get into sales, who's in sales. I think of all of the universities that are teaching marketing and sales together. This book is with Sakis, myself, we have a total of 12 global sales leaders who've come together to contribute our perspectives from real world pracademics. And when I say pracademics, we are practicing academics, but also inside business today, and we lead business entities. So again, a great shout out to Dr. Christine Eastman, Dr. Phil McGowan, and Dr. Beth Rogers for being our guiding light and our editors, and for Dr. Phil Squire for writing the foreword of this book. We couldn't do it without you.
Fantastic. And if anyone wants to learn more about you, Sakis, where can they find you?
LinkedIn is always a good, let's say, interface in order to exchange perspectives. I'm having a couple of articles coming out, but I'm very open to be contacted and to exchange with people that are interested on transformation, sales, or any aspect of leadership.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us for our 6th and final episode in the series.
Is it the final?
No. Well, we can say final, and then we can always announce a comeback.
You never know. Sakis, thank you so much. As always, it's a great pleasure and an honor to be with you. I thank you for your wisdom and your experience and for sharing with all of us. Keep going. Keep shining that bright light.
Pleasure on my side. Thank you very much, gentlemen.